Hi everyone, Flying Brian Bobich with Rocky Mountain Region PCA here to take you on a lap around High Plains Raceway, one of America's greatest amateur road racing facilities and the motorsports gem of Colorado. We begin our lap coming down the front straightaway. As we cross the start-finish line, we take a peek at the starter's tower for any flags, with our primary vision focusing down the track, preparing for our first turn. We want to find a consistent braking point, using the orange bollards on the edge of the track and the number boards off to the right as a guide. Most laps, we will brake somewhere between the 2 and the 3, depending on our entry speed, the track conditions, and the braking capabilities of the car we're in. For manual transmission cars, we want to get our downshift done while still in the braking zone, trying our best to maintain consistent brake pedal pressure while blipping the throttle to get a clean rev match. Staying up against the right-hand edge of the track, we apply a firm squeeze of the brakes, holding that brake pressure until our speed adjustment is done. As we approach the 1 marker, roughly aligned with a single orange bollard at the track's edge, we get ready to begin our turn-in. Our vision is up and looking to the left, trying to locate our apex, which will be on the back side of the painted curbing on the inside of the turn. We mind our car position such that our passenger side wheels remain at the right-hand edge of the track surface until we actually begin our turn-in. As we turn the wheel towards the apex in one smooth motion, we taper off the brake pedal as we dial in more and more steering angle. Our vision is still up, spotting the exit of the turn on the right-hand side of the track. With our apex and track exit lined up in our vision, we start squeezing on throttle, reducing the steering angle smoothly and progressively as we simultaneously roll in more throttle. We let the car come all the way out to the right-hand edge of the track, right up against the track curbing to maximize our exit speed. If we try to carry too much speed or turn in too early and run out of track on the outside edge, we'll just drive straight off to the right. Turn 2 comes up on us fast. We want to work our way over to the left-hand side of the track, or as far over as we have time for, given our speed. We don't want to subconsciously slow down, however, and coast just for the sake of making it all the way to the leftmost edge of the track. And in some circumstances, the optimal line may be to just hug the right-hand edge of the track all the way from the exit of turn 1. We get our initial speed adjustment done by braking in a straight line, while physically turning our head to the right to spot our apex on the back side of the turn. Our turn-in with the steering wheel is slow, smooth, and progressive, imagining ourselves arcing the car down to our apex. With our hands slowly arcing our steering wheel in, we can begin using our throttle to help bring us around the turn. We're trying to work our way to maximum throttle as we pass our apex on the right and begin tracking out to the left. We want to accelerate assertively towards turn 3, with our eyes looking ahead and down the track. Again, no coasting in anticipation of our next turn. We will accelerate fully right up until we are ready to turn in. Turning our head to the right and attempting to look down our long straightaway, we do a quick lift off of our accelerator and immediately initiate our turn to the right once the weight has settled onto the front tires. Or, a slight tap on the brake may be necessary to ensure we have adequate weight transfer onto the front wheels for our turn-in. Ultimately, we want to time our turn-in so that it occurs right after our lift or slight brake. Once we've turned in, we immediately go back to throttle so we can begin accelerating for our longest straightaway of the lap. The idea is to make it all one fluid motion: lift, turn, and go. Or tap, turn, and go if we're including the brake. But the key to turn 3 is to always keep our vision focused where we want to go, which is down the straightaway, and avoid getting fixated on the left edge of the track or off in the dirt where we don't want to be. Depending on our car's acceleration capability, we may hug nearer to our apex on the right for a longer duration to shorten the total distance traveled down the straightaway. Or we will accelerate hard and use all the track we have to the left to maximize our terminal velocity at the end of the straight. As we travel down our longest straightaway of the lap, it's a great time to glance in our mirrors, check our gauges, and take in a few deep breaths. But we're still focused as far down the track as we can see, so we can spot any possible trouble ahead. It's always a good idea to keep an eye on the bunker ahead of the turn 4 braking zone, as any light or flag shown from this position will be our best opportunity to prepare for any issues around the next bend. We also want to check our grip on the wheel and make sure it's nice and relaxed. When we're tense and or not breathing, we won't be able to operate our controls smoothly, and we won't be as fast as we want to be. As we approach turn 4 with a full head of steam, it's important to use the number boards and bollards on the left edge of the track to find a consistent braking point. And we always want to review our mental checklist of what we can do if we suddenly find ourselves with no brakes. Should the worst occur, we will immediately begin pumping the brake pedal furiously and try to regain some form of pressure in the system. And if we simply cannot slow down enough, our best option will be to drive straight off with our front wheels straight as we leave the track surface. But whatever happens, we must resist any urge to try and crank the steering wheel to the right and still make the turn. We will begin turn 4 with a very firm initial brake, ensuring we get an adequate speed adjustment before we even begin to think about our turn-in. We also want to make sure we get our downshifts done while we're still braking in a straight line. And remember, our eyes are up and our car remains in its position at the edge of the track until we're ready to turn. Our optimal focal point will usually be the turn 5 corner bunker, all the way past the exit of turn 4. By trying to spot the bunker as soon as possible, we'll guarantee our vision is nice and high and far ahead. We can use our peripheral vision to keep track of our apex. As we initiate our turn-in, we progressively bleed off our brake pedal pressure and transition to throttle as we make our apex. Our high and far vision helps us naturally turn in at the right point, not too early, not too late. The transition from brake pedal to gas pedal should feel imperceptible. We also want to be aware of how much of the apex curbing we're trying to use. A little curbing is okay to help straighten the radius of the turn, but getting up over the very top of it usually indicates we tried to turn in too early. Ultimately, unsettling the car that much will make it extremely difficult to utilize the extra speed gained and put us out of position for the next turn. As we continue to accelerate away from our apex, it's important to use all of the track width to the left and maximize our exit speed. Turn 5 arrives quickly. We'll need to work hard to make our way over to the right to open up the radius for our next turn, and we'll only get as far over to the outside as we have time for. Just like our transition between turns 1 and 2, we don't want to coast or subconsciously slow down just to make it all the way to the right-hand edge, nor do we want to be angled in the wrong direction when we begin the turn. We need to be mentally prepared, however, to get on our brake pedal promptly, as our turn-in point will come up very quickly. We may also need to fit in another downshift in our relatively short braking zone, depending on how many gears we dropped heading into the prior turn. Turn-in will be a little earlier than we'd normally expect, as our apex has lots of positive camber to help us turn. We can use the orange bollard on the right-hand edge of the track as a reference point for beginning our turn-in. However, as a general guideline, if we feel as though the car is fully settled and under control when we begin turning, we likely turned in too late. For such a small section of track, there's a lot going on between turn 4 and turn 5. We must be at least one step ahead mentally in anticipation to ensure we execute our turn-in promptly. As we feel the positive camber rimshot us around the turn, we accelerate assertively and track out all the way to the right-hand edge of the track. As we accelerate down our short chute towards turn 6, we smoothly transition from track right to track left. Heading into Danny's lesson, it's important to note we're accelerating downhill. This will compromise our ability to slow down and turn as the track surface is falling away from us. As we approach the pavement change, we brake firmly in a straight line to perform our initial speed adjustment, and downshift if necessary. With turn 6 being an off-camber decreasing radius turn, there are several ways to approach it. On this lap, we begin the turn with a slight initial turn-in, allowing us to follow the left-hand edge of the track. We also maintain a slight brake to keep our front tires gripping as the track surface falls away from us. As we arrive at about the midpoint of the turn, we physically turn our head to the right to look down our next straightaway. This is also a great time to remind ourselves that sometimes a slow turn is just that, slow. We can't hustle our way through by simply dive bombing in with too much entry speed. Now that we can see where we want to go, we dial in more steering angle at a relatively quick and sharp rate to make our second apex. And once we feel the car pivot, we can begin adding in throttle progressively as we unwind our steering wheel and track out all the way to the left. The tendency for many drivers is to attempt to muscle their way through the second half of the turn, but we can't jump on the throttle hard if we still have lots of steering angle dialed in. We also can't go back to throttle if we haven't finished our pivot. Now accelerating down our small straightaway towards turn 7, we stay track left and begin to focus our vision up and to the right. Our apex is going to be on the backside of the turn, roughly 3/4 of the way up the hill. Before we begin our turn-in, we can do a slight brush of the brakes to get our front tires to bite into the hill. In many cars, a simple lift of the throttle will be sufficient before turning, with no need for any brake pedal. And our turn-in will be a little sharper than it looks, as we want to get tucked up against the curbing on the inside. Once we're tucked in, we can assertively apply our throttle up the hill. As we crest the hill, we want to let the car track out all the way to the left. We finish our turn and carry as much exit speed as possible. And every time we come through turn 7, we must be aware of our track conditions, as the outside can get very slick with marbles. Experimenting with widening our arc through the turn can yield much different and suboptimal results later in the day. After we've tracked out to the left, we need to work hard to get as far over to track right as we can. Just like our other short transitions at high planes, we'll be better off being a half a car width or two from the track edge and facing straight than slowing down or being angled in the wrong direction just to make it to the very edge. We should be ready to brake promptly and firmly, as there is very little room to adjust our braking point when we've carried good speed out of turn 7. And we must be anticipating what we will do before we need to do it. As a general guideline, we should already be firmly on the brakes by the time we get to the set of 2 orange bollards on the right. Even a relatively small compression of the braking zone can have a large effect on our ability to slow down enough for turn 8. And, as this is another relatively slow turn, we will likely need a downshift in our braking zone as well. Our turn-in for 8 will be on the later side, about where we see the single orange bollard on the right, as we want a long, straight line out of the turn to maximize the amount of time we can spend accelerating. It's generally safe to use a bit of the curbing at the inside of the turn to help straighten it out. However, we shouldn't use it to simply make up for a poor trajectory, as we will quickly run out of room at the turn exit. Once we know we've made our apex, we can start to accelerate towards the right-hand edge as we unwind the steering wheel. Since we're in such a slow speed turn, we will likely be able to get away with adding more throttle than our steering angle would normally allow. We need to fight this temptation, however, as it's ultimately counterproductive. We'll just scrub our front tires with no additional gain in speed. Instead, we will really focus on unwinding the steering wheel and use as much of the exit road on the right as we need. If we're still finding it difficult to fully unwind or accelerate fully at the exit of the turn, we need to think about possible root causes. For example, we may be repositioning our hands on the steering wheel before turn-in instead of leaving them at 9 and 3, compromising our ability to naturally return the wheel back to its centered position. Setting up for turns 9A and 9B, more commonly referred to as the bobsled, we want to be thinking car balance. We want to continue accelerating up until our initial turn-in and hold a constant throttle as we smoothly head right and then back left. Both apexes will be on the back side of the curbing, and our transitions from side to side should feel fluid and controlled, just like a bobsled heading down its icy run. As we apex the second curb, we can begin adding more throttle if not already at maximum, as we are now pointed straight down the hill towards our next turn. Accelerating towards turn 10, we must be prepared to get on the brakes promptly and firmly, as we will need to overcome the track surface falling away from us. Our car should be positioned straight, roughly aligned with the end of the prior curb. As we apply our firm brake, we already have our head up and looking to the right. We're trying to spot the bunker at turn 11 as soon as possible. By keeping our vision far down the track and focused on where we want to end up, our hands will naturally know when and how much to turn the steering wheel to get us there. Remember, the hands go where the eyes go. Once we're aimed in the right direction, we start assertively rolling on throttle even before we've made it to the apex, as there's lots of positive camber on the inside of the turn. Remember, we're still focused down the track on the bunker, using only our peripheral vision or maybe a quick glance to keep track of our apex. And track out all the way to the left. Accelerating down our short straightaway and preparing for turn 11, we'll notice our upcoming turn is almost identical in radius as turn 2, only going uphill instead of staying flat. So, as a general guideline, if we figure out an optimal line through turn 2, we'll try to apply it in turn 11. Conversely, if we find an optimal line through turn 11, we'll try to replicate it in turn 2. On this lap, we will enter turn 11 about 2/3 of the way over to the left, with a firm application of the brakes in a straight line to get our initial speed adjustment done. We may also need a downshift during our brake zone to prepare us to accelerate back up the hill once we've made our apex. Like our approach to turn 2, we'll turn in with a slow progressive arc of the steering wheel, gradually adding throttle to help bring us around the turn. The key, as always, will be having our vision up and our head turned to the right, looking for our apex on the backside of the inside curbing before we can even see it. Our goal is to be at maximum throttle once we're pointed toward the exit of the turn on the left-hand side. Remember, we're driving up a hill. Our front tires will naturally have more grip and our rear tires less. This means we can apply our throttle more assertively than if we were on flat ground, but it must still be smooth and progressive. Exiting turn 11, accelerating all the way to the left-hand edge, we'll find ourselves already at turn 12. Arguably the simplest turn to master, 12 is merely a small shallow bend in the track. We'll initiate our turn with just a small amount of steering angle back to the left, continuing our acceleration up the hill. We simply maintain that slight angle of the wheel and let the car naturally drift out to the right-hand edge of the track. We're now in the proper position to prepare our entry into the corkscrew. As we come barreling towards the corkscrew with a full head of steam, we can use our number boards out to the right as well as the orange bollards on the right-hand edge of the track as guides for where to begin braking. Most cars will begin braking somewhere between the 2 and the 3, but similar to turn 8, we need to be wary of attempting to compress our brake zone in large chunks. We squeeze on the brakes quickly and firmly to ensure we've completed an adequate speed adjustment before attempting to enter the top of the corkscrew. We will initiate our turn-in at approximately the 1 board. However, our head should be physically looking to the left, utilizing our far-ahead vision to judge when we want to turn in. As soon as we spot the leading edge of the curbing on the left, we quickly turn in with one smooth, decisive motion. We will be turning a little more to the left than we'd naturally want to if this were a single turn, as doing so will give us the necessary space to head back down to the right with the straightest line possible through the rest of the corkscrew. We can even cheat a little and drive up over the top of the curbing on the left, as it is fairly benign. Since our corkscrew is heading downhill, we want to maximize our ability to carry momentum at the bottom, especially as it leads us on to the second longest straightaway of the lap. This means sacrificing a little bit of entry speed at the top to put us on the optimal line through to the bottom. Attempting to charge the entry with gobs of speed, but in doing so, putting ourselves off the optimal line for the final turn, will ultimately be counterproductive. As we smoothly and decisively turn back to the right, it should feel relatively easy to complete the turn. And as we're heading down the corkscrew, we progressively add in more and more throttle, attempting to reach full throttle by the time we're pointed down the hill. At a minimum, we want to be at maximum throttle by the time we feel the compression at the very bottom of the hill. We also want to take care that we never abruptly lift off our throttle once we're traveling through the corkscrew. We should be thinking about apexing on the backside of the curb, just like carving through the moguls on our favorite ski slope. Our turn back to the left again should be just as smooth and decisive, and again feel easy to complete with our apex on the backside of the curbing. It's okay to nibble a little bit of the curbing on the inside of each turn, but if we're just driving up over the top of them, we're likely making up for a poor line. As we accelerate out of the corkscrew, we track all the way out to the right-hand edge, and look down the track as we complete our lap. Alright, let's go around one more time at full speed. Coming over start-finish, we're looking down the track. Turn 1, we lift at 3, brake at 2, turn in at 1, transition back to throttle, and accelerate to the right-hand edge. Set up for turn 2 as far over as we have time for, firm brake, our head looking to the right, slow progressive turn in with our hands, using our throttle to bring us around. Accelerate to the left-hand edge of the track, and all the way up to our turn in for turn 3. Lift, turn, and go, our vision all the way down our straightaway. Catch a nice deep breath, check our gauges, check our mirrors. Nice firm brake into turn 4, get our downshifting done in a straight line. Taper off our brake pedal as we turn in, vision up, carry maximum speed out of the turn, prepare to brake hard for turn 5. Brake, turn in, and go. Accelerate all the way to the track edge. Smoothly transition from track right to track left. Nice firm brake as we're braking downhill. Arc around the outside of the turn. As we get to our second apex, sharply turn in. Now we can start unwinding and accelerate to the track edge. Coming into 7, our vision is up the hill. Slight brake or big lift, turn in, get the car tucked to the curbing, and accelerate up the hill, tracking out all the way to the left. As we crest the hill, work to get back over to the right. Firm brake. Turn in so we get a nice straight line out. Accelerate using all the track on the right. Dropping down into our bobsled, smooth transitions, right then left. Continue our acceleration down the hill. Vision up, nice firm brake. Spotting the bunker at turn 11, back to throttle, track out. Set up for turn 11, similar to our setup for turn 2, we get our initial speed adjustment done in a straight line. Slow progressive turn in with the wheel, use our throttle to help bring us around. Drive it hard up the hill, track out on the left. Slight steering angle back to the left for a kink at 12, and let the car naturally drift back to the right hand edge. Again, lift at 3, hard brake at 2, turn in at 1. Nice sharp turn in to the left to set up our line down the rest of the hill. Smooth and decisive back to the right, adding throttle. Smooth and decisive back to the left again, adding in more throttle. Track out all the way to the right and accelerate over finish. And that's our lap around High Plains Raceway. Thanks everyone.